The 1970s began as an extension of the 60s, and then took a turn as Generation X grew into their own. There were so many contrasting things happening, from Watergate to the emergence of the Summer Blockbuster movie. It was certainly a time when escaping reality was necessary, and it ended up giving us so many memorable moments. So let's take a look back, and if you grew up in the 1970s, you may remember this. Shag carpeting really did look hideous, but it was also surprisingly comfortable on bare feet. After all, you could lay on the carpet and make angel patterns on the living room floor. Beyond the soft touch, it also came in a variety of earthy shades, from rust orange and moss green to sunshine yellow and sky blue. On top of those shag carpets were most likely couches or decorative pillows upholstered in big floral prints. Let's also not forget about the macrame owl you had hanging around the house too. This decade will always be remembered for the very first home video game, Pong. That's because this two-dimensional game, which was released by Atari in 1972 as a stand-up arcade, was a game changer. It was meant to be a computerized version of table tennis, which involved a white dot slowly bouncing back and forth between two white lines, known as paddles. If you loved playing Pong, then you most certainly remember destroying enemy ships in the arcade game Space Invaders, which was released later in the decade. One of the most popular toys of the time was something called clackers. They were two heavy balls attached to a string that you banged together to make noise. They actually turned out to be quite dangerous and were eventually banned. There's also no doubt you begged your parents for $4 so that you could buy a pet rock. You got to feed your pet rock, dress it up with googly eyes, and take it for a walk, just like a real pet. Do you remember the cool metal lunchboxes you used to carry to school? The sturdy tins protected your bologna sandwiches and were often decorated with cartoons, superheroes, or your favorite movie characters. And of course, don't forget the matching thermos that came with it. In the 70s, every kid seemingly wanted to look like Adam Rich from the TV show 8 is Enough, so they made their parents give them a bowl haircut. If you're unfamiliar with a bowl cut, it's exactly what it sounds like. Mom would put a bowl over your head and use scissors to cut around the edges. The resulting distinctly 70s haircut made it seem like you were wearing a salad bowl as a hat. But if it was good enough for baseball player Pete Rose and Olympic figure skater Dorothy Hamill, it was good enough for anyone. Who could forget the educational animated shorts that popped up during your usual Saturday morning cartoon lineup? Without you realizing, Schoolhouse Rock taught you timeless lessons about grammar, math, politics, and science. The cartoons were funny, and the songs were catchy. I'm sure you can still sing the whole Conjunction Junction What's Your Function song without missing a beat. The biggest 70s fashion accessory was the mood ring, which was a ring that could recognize your emotional state. Blue meant you were calm or relaxed. Amber meant you were nervous or anxious. And black? Well, that meant you were about to lose your temper. To calm yourself down, you may have relaxed on your bed and read the latest issue of Tiger Beat magazine. The original teen pop culture magazine was also full of posters that kids plastered their bedroom walls with. At school, especially during gym class, you wouldn't be caught dead without a classy pair of tube socks. At the time, it was quite the fashion statement. If those socks reached all the way up to your knees, even better. Rarely in the history of fashion has a clothing style been universally accepted by both men and women, but that was the case, especially with the shortest of shorts and colorful striped tube socks. All it took was one seriously terrifying movie, Steven Spielberg's Jaws, to keep an entire generation of children out of the ocean. Jaws made its big screen debut in the summer of 1975, terrifying a nation with a 25-foot mechanical shark, and crystallizing the concept of a summer blockbuster. It made children and adults alike scan the water for signs of a shark fin anytime they were near the ocean. When Star Wars first hit movie theaters in 1977, it was unlike anything the world had ever seen. It was immersive, and the special effects were groundbreaking. If you ask anyone who saw the original Star Wars in theaters about their experience, they'll probably be able to tell you every little detail, right down to how long they waited in line. For many kids, Star Wars defined their childhood. Kids were absolutely obsessed with the movie franchise, and they wanted every Star Wars toy that was released. Do you remember learning how to do the hustle for the very first time? The song came out in 1975, and everyone immediately wanted to learn the dance. The YMCA and the chicken dance also originated during this time, and they too led to crazes that saw everyone performing the dances together. In the 1970s, music was everything. You wouldn't just fan over your favorite bands, you'd play their records on repeat and tape their faces all over your bedroom walls. You may have also grown to love 8-track tapes. These devices gained steadily in popularity because you could take them with you, and many car makers even included an 8-track tape player in new models of their cars. This meant you could listen to whatever you wanted while you cruised the streets of your hometown. They weren't the most user-friendly audio formats, but boy, you sure did love them. Every decade has its top music genre, and in the 70s, disco reigned supreme. If you were brave enough to go to an actual disco, you could get down to the sounds of Casey and the Sunshine Band, the Bee Gees, and the Tramps. Even the Rolling Stones released a disco track to get in on the trend. If that wasn't enough disco for you, you could even strap on some skates and head over to the roller disco. These fast-paced parties would be complete with shiny outfits, bright lights, and of course, groovy tunes. TVs in the 1970s weren't nearly the high-definition entertainment centers they are today. You were lucky if you had decent reception, meaning no fuzzy screens or zigzag lines. Otherwise, you'd have to fidget with the rabbit ear antennas until you got a clear picture. And forget about late-night talk shows and around-the-clock programming. If you turned on the TV after midnight, all you'd see is a test card of color bars. Speaking of television, for teens, Happy Days was the coolest of shows, but adults also had to get a weekly dose of the TV show MASH. There were other popular shows, of course, like The $6 Million Man and Charlie's Angels, which contributed to 1970s pop culture in their own way. You may also remember staying up to watch some of the very first episodes of Saturday Night Live. This was back when cast members like Chevy Chase, John Belushi, and Gilda Radner were at their best, making the entire country laugh together. A 1970s party would never be complete without a cheese log or a cheese ball. These must-have snacks involved shredded cheddar, cream cheese, butter, and chopped nuts for rolling. Another 70s food gem was launched by Betty Crocker in 1971 called Hamburger Helper. This easy-to-make hearty dinner fed millions of us with just a box of pasta, powdered sauce, and a pound of ground beef. Even if you didn't care much for politics in the 1970s, everyone was talking about Watergate. Each night, the evening news reported new details of the scandal, and seeing Richard Nixon leave the White House forever as he boarded a helicopter was one of the most surreal moments of the 1970s, regardless of what side you were on. At Recollection Road, I believe preserving the past is incredibly important, and our friends at Legacy Box do too. So much so, they've offered my viewers a code for 55% off. In today's digital age, analog media like VHS tapes and film reels are fading, risking the loss of cherished memories due to things like mold, dust, and time. But Legacy Box, trusted by over 1.5 million families, offers a simple and safe solution to protect your memories before it's too late. With Legacy Box, you can convert your analog treasures into digital memories effortlessly. Send your VHS tapes, camcorder tapes, and pictures to Legacy Box, and like magic, receive back your originals and digital copies for easy enjoyment, sharing, and organization. And here's the kicker. For a limited time, enjoy an exclusive 55% discount at legacybox.com/recollection. Don't let your memories fade. Preserve your past today with Legacy Box. Buy today to take advantage of this exclusive offer and send them in whenever you're ready. Go to legacybox.com/recollection to save 55% while supplies last. The Marlboro Man was a campaign that showed how rugged you could look smoking filtered cigarettes. During the 1970s, actual ranchers were used to portray the iconic character in both print and commercial advertising. The 1970s was full of great movies, but some would say that this decade is where horror movies became mainstream. The success of such movies as The Exorcist, Halloween, and the Amityville Horror made going to the movies a new experience, where you would leave the theater rattled. The news of the 1970s was consumed by three main topics. The Vietnam War continued, and more Americans were being reported dead each night. During this same time, the Watergate scandal was also making headlines and would lead to Richard Nixon resigning. The oil crisis was also front and center, with long lines of cars and rationing of gas becoming a regular thing. If you grew up in the 70s, the color Harvest Gold is probably very familiar to you. Kitchen appliances were very popular in this color, and usually the bathrooms would be colorful as well, with avocado green porcelain fixtures. Music during the 1970s was all over the place, from Motown to rock to disco. Motown was still relevant because they had the Jackson 5. Rock and roll bands like the makeup and costume-wearing Kiss and the Southern rockers Lynyrd Skynyrd gave teens an alternative to the late surge of disco music. There were also many teens wearing t-shirts that showed off their distaste for disco music throughout the late 1970s. To showcase music on television, the popular shows Soul Train and The Midnight Special gave fans the opportunity to watch performances of their favorite singers and bands. For The Midnight Special, you would have to stay up late because it aired on Friday nights, following The Tonight Show. Primetime television during the 1970s was an eclectic mix, much like music of the day. The Brady Bunch and The Partridge Family were wholesome family-centered comedies, while Starsky and Hutch added some action to the mix. All in the Family was a new kind of comedy show that pushed limits when it came to political correctness, and fans loved it. Other shows that made for regular viewing were The Waltons, Sanford and Son, and the Dynamite Good Times. Evel Knievel seemingly was every boy's idol during this period. Everyone was trying to recreate jumps and playing with toys that were branded with the Evel Knievel name. The popular stuntman was exciting to watch, whether he cleared a jump or crash landed. It was common in the 1970s to see a large-handled comb hanging out of the back pocket of a pair of jeans. The fashion statement let everyone know you prioritized hair care. For older men, leisure suits were a great way to make a statement. They were classic, but also casual. To complete the look, a pair of platform shoes were perfect. Earth shoes were also popular footwear, if you could get used to the negative heel technology that made you feel like you were walking in sand. The year 1976 was an important anniversary in the history of the United States. Our bicentennial was celebrated with parades and ceremonies that led up to the 4th of July celebration that was fitting for 200 years of independence. Patriotism was at an all-time high, with everyone getting in on wearing their red, white, and blue. If you were a kid during the early 1970s, there is no doubt you collected wacky packages. These novelty trading cards produced by Topps featured parodies of consumer products that made kids crack up. Waterbeds were also a trendy way to sleep during the 70s. These wavy beds peaked in the 1970s, and they were all the rage. It seemed like everyone wanted one. In 1977, the death of Elvis Presley shocked the world. There are a few events that people remember where they were when it happened, but this announcement was one of them. The funeral that followed was attended by 75,000 fans, lining the streets as the procession made its way by. It was also televised 2 days later. During the 1970s, there were some things that every kid had or wanted. Skateboards became the newest way to cruise down the street and show off with your friends. While hanging out in your bedroom, you might have turned on a lava lamp to set the mood, and then grabbed your favorite toy, a Stretch Armstrong, to see how far you could pull his arms before they returned to normal. You may have also relaxed on your bed to read the newest issue of Mad Magazine. Like wacky packages, Mad Magazine made fun of everything, and it was great for a laugh. If you were in the mood for something more serious, you may have picked up a Dynamite magazine to see what your favorite celebrity was up to. Farrah Fawcett was the 1970s in a nutshell. Every girl wanted to look like her with her feathered hair, and every boy fantasized about her. Posters were big in the 70s, and Farrah was pinned on every boy's wall. Popular pinups for girls were either Shawn Cassidy or Leif Garrett. To finish out the list, the movie Smokey and the Bandit was an action-packed thrill ride that took everyone along for the ride. The film was fun to watch and made everyone not only want a Pontiac Trans Am, but also a CB radio. The movie popularized the use of CB radios, so much so that they began appearing in many teenagers' cars as a way to communicate with friends and also strangers. Let me know in the comments if I missed anything, and make sure to check the description of this video for links to pick up a t-shirt and sign up for the newsletter. Thank you to our loyal Patreon supporters listed here. Visit patreon.com/recollectionroad to join the club. As always, thank you so much for watching.